South Africa has been plagued, as you know, by a cancer called corruption. It comes in many forms, but the worst of it came in the form of state capture. The Zondo Commission is trying to join the dots. But what is the NPA going to do about it all? The National Director of Public Prosecutions, Shamila Batohi, talks to me about prosecuting corruption and state capture-related cases. Thank you for joining me, ma'am. So let's start with a broad framework. You've been in collaboration with the State Capture Commission of Inquiry due to the amendments of the various rules and terms of reference of the commission itself that enabled you to work collaboratively. How much has that yielded by way of, a clear path towards prosecutions?
So let's get right into it.
Yes.
No, thank you for that, and thank you for having me. Yes, the change to the regulations happened, the Zondo Commission regulations happened about, I think it's over a year ago. And that certainly opened the way for greater collaboration between the investigating directorate and the commission, as well as between law enforcement generally and the commission. In terms of how much has it yielded, there have been, you've noticed let's just say there's green shoots. There's been a couple of really important cases that have come through. But let's not, let's be candid about this. There's still a long way to go. And in as much as we are seeing that there's more collaboration, we're getting the cases together, and as I said, you've seen some of them, but there's still a lot of work that needs to be done in the system to make sure that we're able to deal properly with state capture and a whole lot of other related corruption. For example, PPE corruption. And so, we've got to, we've been engaging, the ID has been engaging with a whole range of stakeholders, the SARS, the Financial Intelligence Center, the FIC, SIU, we're working very closely with them. So in as much as things are changing, and I think, the days of, there's no longer a case where people can act with complete impunity. It's a question of not if, but when there will be these prosecutions. And so, we are engaging more with the Zondo Commission in terms of the migration of the resources from the Commission to the Directorate. That is quite, an important aspect of being able to deal with all of these cases. Extensions of the Commission make that, a little more difficult. But I want to say that even when that happens, it will still take a while to get the cases to court. These cases don't happen overnight. So once the Commission winds down its work, there will still be a lot of work that needs to be done in the context of the Directorate to make sure that we get these cases to court.
Speaking of the Directorate, it was established, of course, in terms of a proclamation by the President to look specifically at these kinds of prosecutions. Talk to me about capacity thereof, because my understanding is that, initially it really didn't have the kind of capacity that you would require for the, task at hand.
Initially it had nothing. Let's get that. It didn't have anything. And so just trying to build that capacity, and we're still not where we want to be. So if you talk about capacity, it is, things are moving a little quicker now, but, we have to accept that the ID is not firing on all cylinders yet. And so there's still a lot of work that needs to get to the point where we can say the ID has the capacity that it needs. Look, the reality is that in order to deal with corruption properly, in order to, to make sure that we have, there's respect for the rule of law, we can't tinker. Government needs to be, we need to be really, really bold and courageous about how do we really want to tackle corruption in South Africa. The investigating directorate, although it's an important step, it's difficult because it's working in a very complicated legal and institutional framework. And so, if we really want to get to the bottom of corruption, we need, there was an announcement about a year ago that, about a single entity. But we're taking too long about this. We really need to decide, what is that single entity going to do? What is it going to be? Where is it going to be? And then we must move. We've had experiences in the past with entities like the DSO, the Scorpions. They were not perfect, but there's lots of lessons to be learned. And I think that it's taking too long for those decisions to be made at the political level in terms of what the single entity is, and you know, so that the sooner we get that kind of clear direction, I think it will be a lot easier for us to move.
So when you talk about this single entity, is it something that you are thinking will be more long-term and sustainable in the battle against corruption, as opposed to, you know, something with a short to medium-term mandate, such as the investigating directorate, something that is all-encompassing? Absolutely.
You know, we're going to be fighting corruption for a long time. This is, you know, we need, South Africa needs, you know, a corruption-busting unit that is properly resourced, that has the proper legal framework that allows it to do its work quickly and effectively. And at the moment, we don't really have that. And so the ID is really the second best, and we're trying to make the most and to position it so that when we have this permanent single entity, whatever it is, you know, the ID can morph into that. You know, I'm not even talking about where it should be on all of those issues, but we are setting up a capacity for the future to deal with these issues. So I think the sooner we get that kind of clarity around it, it will really help to speed up the fight against corruption.
So knowing how things tend to happen in our country and how politics can overtake what seems to be the sensible and logical thing, if, and this is hypothetical, if in future we come to a point where we were with the Scorpions around 2006, 2007, where there's now clamor to say this investigative directorate is not established properly and it should, you know, it should be disbanded. Given what you've just said about the move towards a single entity that integrates everything and is more sustainable and long-term, you as Shamila Batohi, I imagine that you would not support any disbandment in the absence of a replacement by a new capacity.
Not at all. I think it was a disaster to disband the Scorpions in the first place. It was not a perfect entity. But it needed to be strengthened. And so to answer your question, short answer is no, I would certainly not support that. But I do want to say, you know, having said what I just said, there's a lot of good things that's happening in law enforcement, in the NPA, in the directorate, within us working with the DPCI, the Hawks, in the Specialized Commercial Crime Unit, in the Asset Forfeiture Unit. And, you know, there's been some really good cases that are coming through. But as I said when I started off, we have a way to go. But I feel confident. The important thing is, you know, and most of these key institutions now, I think, are headed up by people that have the determination to want to make a difference and to end impunity. That is a good sign moving forward.
Without asking you to prosecute whatever cases emerge from the work of the Zondo Commission, just paint an outline then for us. What are the contours of this collaboration between you and the Commission itself? Are we talking here investigators now residing almost permanently within the ID, or in constant communication and collaboration and formulating whatever charges need to be formulated? Or are we not at that point yet? And are we ever going to get to that point?
Well, let me say that there's a process of migration of the Zondo resources began. And migration of resources means it's your technical capabilities, it's your human resource capabilities. And so this has started, but, you know, as long as the Commission is still doing its work, it becomes a bit challenging. But let me say that we are speaking, the Directorate is talking with Commission investigators, you know, with the legal teams. And so, you know, we're sharing within the limits of our independent mandates, but we are sharing a lot of information, and there's a lot of collaboration in terms of trying to get these cases ready for court.
And what does a future prosecution look like for you in that context? Do you envisage a situation where some of the legal team from the Commission of Inquiry get title from yourself to prosecute and lead the prosecution, or have you made an alternative arrangement as to who will lead the eventual prosecutions?
We can't say who will lead the prosecutions, but certainly we want the resources in the Zondo Commission are invaluable. You have people that have worked on these cases for a long time. And so for us, we would certainly like to get that capacity and capability. But, who will at the end of the day lead these cases? There's no decisions that have been made on that. But we certainly want to make sure that that expertise that's been built up isn't lost.
Was there a sense, Advocate Shamila Batohi, that you wanted to initially strike big, make an impact amid the outcry that we saw last year among South Africans, rightly so, around the issue of corruption? But since then, you don't really have much to show for it other than the Estina dairy farm related prosecutions.
I think, it's not about striking big, it's about making impact. And given the hunger of the South African public for us to actually get to those most responsible for the corruption in this country, we were also equally, and we still are, determined to make sure that we get to those most responsible. But it's, there's the Estina dairy is one aspect of it. But there's so many other cases that are really, really important. And remember, in order to get to those most responsible, you have to build up a case to get to the top. And so we have to make sure, as I've always said, that when we take these cases to court, they're not easy. I mean, there's a case in the U.S. at the moment. One of the masterminds behind the 9/11, what happened, is 20 years later now facing trial. I'm not saying that's our benchmark.
Sure.
We certainly don't want to wait that long. The point I make is that it's really putting these cases together. We have to make sure that we have watertight cases because they are going to be fought from every angle. And so we were also hoping we'd be able to get cases quicker, and rest assured we are trying our real best to get there. But the challenges are huge, and the important thing is we see light at the end of the tunnel. We see these cases coming through. And success is not only about prosecutions. Remember, there's been a lot of really good asset recovery cases. I mean, in the one case, I think it was, which one was it? 1.4 billion was seized by the investigating directorate. I'm just trying to get the name of that case. Shlakudi matter, we had a 1.4 billion restraint. In the Free State matter, there was a 300 million restraint. In the Lulani matter, there's 25 million restraint. And these are just three that I'm talking to you about. So asset recovery is a big part of the success. And there's a whole lot of other things that also, talk to success. But we can talk about that later.
Absolutely. Let's pause for a moment. The Advocate Shamila Batohi joining me here on the Intel, and our conversation continues in the next few minutes. And towards the end, I will be asking her about prosecution of TRC-related cases, as well as the prosecutions around the unrest and violence that we saw in July. You don't want to miss that.